Cool, good afternoon. I just would like to start off by saying thank you to have two people that are very similar to us, very culturally aligned. Maurice De Villiers, Head of Property for Woolworths, Leon Lambrechts from Pepkor. So honored to have you sitting here in this very dressed up couch with a lot of equipment behind the scenes here. If I could start off, maybe Leon, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a short introduction on yourself.
Yeah, firstly, it's easy to free up time in my diary. It's not that full anyway. So happy to be out here in beautiful Pringle Bay and to have a chat with you, Chris. As always, lovely to work with you guys and spend some time with you. Born Cape Townian, was born in the city, grew up in Parow, accidentally or incidentally close to where I work at the moment. Went to Stellenbosch University, then did a stint at UCT. I qualified as an attorney, practiced for a year or so, and then realized that being an attorney is not for me. So I joined a group called 7-Eleven, worked for a Greek gentleman by the name of George Atadakis, who in the space of 2 years exposed me so much to retail, to franchising, property, even got to manage a football team, and then from 7-Eleven, I joined Pep, and that's 21 years ago, and I'm still with the group. They say if you last at Pep for 2 years, you're bound to stay for the rest of your life. So, very happy where I am.
I must confess, obviously spending some time in the industry, we meet a lot of real estate people, and some of the best property people we come across have cut their teeth at Pepkor, and there's some outstanding people that are different retailers that have come from that, I guess, school of property. So the one thing I can say about you guys, other than lasting long, is you definitely get around and you see the country. I think, Maurice, over to you. You don't need too much of an introduction, but for viewers' sake, I think it'd be great if you could give us just a similar feel as to how you've ended up at Woolies as head of property in your position. Share that with us.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and thanks for the invite to be here in such a lovely setup and place. And the opportunity to chat. I was born in a place called Turfloop outside Petersburg, today known as Polokwane, and finished my schooling in Petersburg. My mum packed me in my trommel on the way on a train to Port Elizabeth to study quantity surveying. I was there for about 5 years, and then had to do at that age, obviously, to do military service. And then once finished, after a bit of travel, did my professional quantity surveying practical years, if you want to call it, in Belleville, and working for a small quantity surveying firm. And I always wanted to be on the other side of the line. I mean, obviously, you grew up, you don't necessarily have the network, not growing up into Cape Town, coming from the outside. And I really got a lucky break. I got into Old Mutual Field Services Properties. Amazing learning skills, probably one of the best for somebody just stepping into property, every aspect of property development, property management, selling of property, development of property, all aspects you can possibly put together. It was an amazing learning ground. And every little town that possibly had an Old Mutual rep, there was some kind of a property involved, and really got to know the country. And that laid a foundation for a lot of the work still today that we benefit from, being able to see every little small corner of the country. You never know where those building blocks is going to take you later in life. You spend your life behind an Avis car, but it paid dividends. I think my second break really came into Woolworths was busy unbundling at the time. I did a stunt at UCT. I did my MBA as well, and Wooltrue at the time was a conglomerate of Massmart, today Massmart, and Truers and Topics and Woolworths. And they unbundled, and Woolworths came with a whole bunch of properties, corporately owned properties, and they had no systems and nobody to manage it. So I came in right on the day one with this, and I did that for about 10 years. So we mostly bought, sold properties, developed properties, mostly in the warehousing side, some offices and a retail scheme. I had a short stunt break, and then I had a phone call to ask me when my predecessor left if I want to take over, come back and have a chat about this. Yeah, I think retail was, once Leon says, I think you fall in love with retail. The one point is you never arrive. You're never on top of it. You never know everything. And if you enjoy the academic side of it, it's a career that you'll stick in for a long time. And I think other than myself and Philip and probably with some of the players that's been in this kind of role for many years. I've been now in this role for about 17 years.
Yeah, there certainly has been a shift over time. And I
Saki
remember
was the name I was searching for. Yeah.
when I joined the industry, just quick introduction. I've been with Flanagan Gerard for 15 years now. It's been an absolute privilege working with my best friend, Paul Gerard, and a heck of a family business. But I remember back in the earlier days, there were a lot of the gentlemen you're referring to, who've obviously doing other things now. But you were certainly there right in the beginning. And something that stuck out is I always remembered you often looked at our transactions from a development perspective. It wasn't just from a retail perspective. And I just find that interesting. You could sometimes, seems to me that you put yourself in our shoes when we're almost doing a sale job, because you've got both sides of the coin. That's quite apparent. But I must confess, even when I was a youngster, you've always given us time, and you've always heard us out. And it's been a pleasure working with you. I think maybe just to launch into it, and maybe Leon, this is something I'd like to just tap your brain for. What we've noticed is maybe shopping trends and habits, things that have taken place. We're seeing across our portfolio, there's no question that foot counts across the board are down. Turnovers are certainly growing from our perspective that we can see. But do you notice these kind of shopping trends and habits? What's your view on shopping trends in that kind of sector at the moment?
Good question, and I know you're going to start with that one. So what we're seeing is the macros are tough for everybody at the moment. Like-for-like growth is tough. Although turnovers are up, but it's up because retailers needing to find alternative kind of income streams, and we can allude to that later. And what we've seen over the last, say, 5 years, the customer definitely has less money to spend, and therefore she needs to spend that wisely. So there was a definite move towards more value retail, and I think you've needed to become, once a shopping center goes beyond a certain size, it needs to be truly representative. If I just take our brands for Pep, for instance, you'd never think of having Pep in a super regional mall. Now, the biggest Pep by turnover is in a super regional mall. So centers had to become very representative. The value offering, and nowadays the off-price offering in centers are growing, and that kind of shows the customer has less to spend and needs to get value for their money. So that's kind of like a trend we're seeing, and one of the other, and I suppose it's because our country is not growing, the economy is not growing. There seems to have been an exodus of once Africa was seen as a great destination for the overseas brands. That seems to have almost gone the other way. So it's great to see the local retailers being innovative, coming up with new brands, moving into different segments. And categories. We had the Mr. Price taking on power fashion, going into the off-price. We're doing the same with choice clothing now. We're seeing there's a gap there. So I think we've got some bloody good retailers in South Africa, and we most certainly are excited to where the future is heading.
Yeah, I found it interesting. I think you guys know that space so well. And maybe just for viewers, one of the first things Leon said to me is Pringle even a town, because there wasn't a Pep here. But you guys seem to understand that market well. Talk to us a little bit about the slightly more aspirational brands and the higher LSM brands, if I can even call it that. We've just noticed Refinery as a brand seems to be got good attention to detail, seems to be on the up. What's the take on that? Where's that brand heading?
Yeah, well, the story of Refinery is actually, it was a brand that that was born out of necessity. We had the joint venture with the Australian crowd, under which we had the license to run the JJ stores. That came to an end, and we were sitting with that real estate and had to do something with it. And a gentleman in our group came up with the name of Refinery, and it was born. But it's an overnight success that took 7 years to build. So we still want to, through Refinery, it's more of an upmarket brand, but it's still value. It's still a value offering. And the customer perceives it as good value, as a good quality for what they're paying. Because we are so dominant in babies and kids, we always knew that we had to expand the Refinery offering into kids. So we've rolled out Refinery Junior, which will cover the kids. And coming later in the year, we plan to bring in even an active wear on the ladies' side, because that's this whole athleisure is really a big segment in the women's market. So we'll even be growing a Refinery going forward. So
would that be a house brand, or would it be a Refinery activewear brand, if I may ask?
Yeah, I think no, it's a house brand. Quite a catchy name, but super good quality, very good value. So that'll be launching in September, and yeah, we're very excited about that.
Sorry, would that fall under the Refinery brand, or would it be a standalone business in terms of real estate?
What we found is you need to have it under one roof. So same with Refinery Kids, we would like to have a bigger box. So the boxes could grow from 200 to about 450 squares. So yeah, to save costs, efficiency wise, it's better to have it all under one roof.
Okay. I think, Maurice, from your perspective, just in line with what Leon's kind of touching on there, Woolies from a textile perspective certainly speaks to the department store market. Over time, we've noticed more partnerships with brands, and we're seeing more branded apparel having more prominence within the stores. Is that a conscious strategy? What's the view on that? And is that something you're pushing further and looking to grow, or is that just a small element you're adding to the business?
In a fashion business, it's forever evolving. And secondly, it's also the principle of tiering. So it's only in some of the premium stores. It's not widely run throughout the chain. And I think there's a cap. So it will probably be never more than 10 or 12% of the turnover or the footprint as a percentage. So it's really a niche play, and there is a turnover of those external brands that come in that try it. Levi's been with us now for a long time, for example, but some of the other brands had a short stunt and move on. So I think that will remain, but it will never get bigger. The idea is just purely to assist with the overall tiering from the luxury brands, from the country road brands, right down to your basics at the end of the day in the fashion side.
We often debate in our office, department store versus mono-brand store, and I guess it comes down to the customer. The customer profile. Some people, I think, want to be in the Levi store engaging with the Levi expert, and some people have Woolies cards, Woolies shoppers, and have got multiple reasons to shop there. So we often debate that. What is the future of a department store? What is the value of having the brands in one roof? And it's quite clearly working, and one can see that working if it's done correctly. In terms of the food business, at Flanagan Gerard, we recently noticed, and we actually spoke about it. I'm not sure how much we can share in this period, but we've noticed the food turnovers and performance the last 4 or 5 months really growing nicely and showing some good year on year, but across the board. And I was just curious if that's something you can elaborate on, and what you guys see from a brand perspective, why that's the case, where that comes from.
I think it's really a world of two different worlds, from the fashion business to the food business. The food business has really been growing. We've seen strong unit growth. So not only is it like in the past, as the demographics, as the disposable income becomes tighter in the country, you can see the unit growth fall. Sometimes you can get a bigger basket The basket size are growing, but the number of visits and the number of transactions is dropping. But overall, you still growth. And I think in the last 12 months, we've seen some strong food growth come through with unit growth, which is for us very encouraging. On our side of the business, we layer down space, and one of the measures we keep on looking at is the gross space as a percentage we put down relative to unit growth. So if we put 3.5% space growth down for foods, we expect next year at least a minimum of 3.5% volume growth. If you have a disconnect, that just means that you start diluting the business over a period of time. And these things are never always running parallel. And there's sometimes lag effects and economics that you overlay, but you don't want to go for too many years with space being layered in and you don't see the consequential volume growth. So I think now it's coming through, and it's, I think we're happy. The big gorilla on the block is always there, and we got to watch what they're doing and monitor what they're doing. But, we, in this kind of highly competitive environment, we're very happy to be growing market share at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I think a blessing is that only you guys have chuckles, which will hopefully stand in good stead going forward. Maybe a more a topic discussed quite heavily, which is e-commerce, digital. I don't want to harp on this too much, but we certainly notice from a landlord perspective, our angle, our benefit, our offering is the tangible, the bricks and mortar. We're finding as a shopping center, we're having to create more reasons to be there. And maybe from your perspective, Leon, do you, quite clearly you do, but to what extent do you see the value in physical stores versus online retail versus where your market's based? And how much of a focus do you put on e-commerce and online retail from Pepkor's perspective?
It varies between the brands, but if I talk about the Big Blue, say Pep for instance, we know that especially the Pep home brand, you need to move. Our next step would be to move more into an online space. But maybe if I just take a step back, our customers can't afford to make a mistake when they buy, so they need to. More often than not, they want to feel the garment. They want to talk to the shop assistant who knows their name and who knows their situation. So for a lot of our customers, they simply not there to buy something online, but the journey starts online. I mean, we've seen through our cellular sales, cell phone sales, how many smartphones we're selling. So we know that most people in this country has got a smartphone with them. So the shopping journey definitely starts online. So you got to be digital. Maybe it's not an online portal yet, but you got to be digital. So the digital space needs to talk to the actual space, to the bricks and mortar space. From our group, we've put our focus this past few years on building kind of I don't want to call it a rewards program, but for a lack of a better word, a loyalty scheme. So we've got about 8 million subscribers to our loyalty scheme, and once you know the customer better, the feeling is then the next natural step would be an online offering. So I don't see it's not definitely not it's not far off, but maybe we're not leading the way as some of the other retailers, as Woolies or
I guess
the
even
TFG guys.
From a logistics perspective, I just think about some of the outlying markets and the rural areas that some of us are working on together. I think there is some limitation, even in those outlying areas to actually get online retail to.
Yeah, you'll be surprised through our. I mean, the product that Pep has, it's called Paxi. So it was born out of some UNISA students wanted to hand in their papers to UNISA, and so this parcel in a taxi started. We call it Paxi, and currently they're distributing about 6 million parcels a year. So I mean that's more than 500,000 a month. So with that, we've almost created that last mile capability. So yeah, I don't see it's very far off. It's definitely something that you as a group have to dabble in, but I don't see it's gonna take over our market in the near
Yeah,
in your future.
we certainly see people spending, people will do an hour to 2 hour trips, maybe twice a month to get to a one-stop shop. So obviously it pays us to say this. We heavily invested in that space, and we see bricks and mortar existing for a very long time. But I think as landlords, we've got a job to keep it active, keep it interesting. The old cliche, this work, live, play. You're certainly seeing more of that, where you have to bring additional users to precincts to get shoppers to spend more time there and ultimately spend money. So I think we'll continue in that light. You touched on customer loyalty and this loyalty card. What's the concept behind that particular card? Are you guys gathering information? How are you getting people to be loyal in that particular case?
Well, there's some great deals on the card. So there's percentages off on purchases and so forth. So and obviously you do gather information, and that information obviously is used to market to that customer. As you get to know the customer and the life stage that customer is in, you can almost evolve with that. You can walk the journey with the customer. Imagine, if the customer is buying nappies, you could maybe suggest some baby grows, or So I think that is the way that the direction retail is going. Is
producing more sales through the loyalty ultimately.
Definitely.
And tell me something. We spoke about it some time back, and once again, this may be something we need to debate if we can share this or not. But you spoke about the more higher end smartphones, the ability to get those to market. Is that something you can elaborate on?
Definitely.
With a particular IT system encoded on the device, which allows people to make bigger purchases in terms of buying a better phone, but then also having control as to whether that down payment's managed correctly over time. I don't know if that's something you can touch on, but I found that fascinating that Pepkor's in that space.
Well, it's basically if you have to ask what is Pepkor's what is Pepkor's strategy, and what do we do? Why do we do things? Is we take a customer's need and trying to execute on that need, and then obviously try to monetize while we're executing. And one of the things that we picked up is that customers have the need to have better smartphone, to have better phones. They want a better phone. There are finance products, external or third-party finance products in the market, but we thought let's take it in-house. We call it Phonium. And it has taken off like a house on fire. So basically how it works is you rent the phone for a 12-month period, where after it becomes yours. You make your first payment on day 7. Incidentally, the highest default payment date is on day 7, and then their phone becomes the customer's phone. And
I think you're ultimately giving access to a much bigger ticket item. And just slowly improving the tech out there.
Absolutely.
By doing so. Maurice, from a Woolies food perspective, and I guess some of this kind of line of questioning comes out of our interactions and our debates. And obviously Woolies has a phenomenal e-commerce platform, very strong customer loyalty card. But often we get into chats about real estate, and a traditional landlord or developer would take demographic studies, would take quantum of people, would take LSM into account. We'd sit with you and we'd be like, this is our idea, this is what we think. And we come and we chat. You shared some interesting information, particular to customers who shop within margin, and turnovers don't necessarily translate to GP, and understanding that certain markets and certain areas have got very particular buying habits. How do you unpack that information, or is that a combination of loyalty card together with demographics or research, or how do you get to that kind of knowledge or decision-making process?
I think it starts at the strategy as to who you want to talk to, what is the food business target market. And that over the years has changed. And I think over time, you realize that you can't be all things to all people. You are targeting a specific income level, irrespective of demographic. It's an income, disposable income target market. And yes, there's other elements of the market that do buy you, but they don't necessarily buy you deep. So we have a wide range of stores in very food stores in very different demographics, from the trouble areas into the CBDs, into a premium convenience centers, into large regional malls. And there you can unpack the profitability from that customer base. We can see the extent of what they buy varies hugely between different areas of the country, and the profit margin of those products that they effectively buy at the end of the day. And then you realize you can make turnover in a certain environment, call it a CBD environment, Joburg CBD or Pretoria CBD, for example, but you just can't make any money out of it. You're running the store effectively at a net loss. The turnover's there. So people will come in and buy, bulk packs, Sunday cakes, those kind of elements. Very few high margin products that's in the normal average basket size at the end of the day. And then you just realize it's more about chasing the sweet spot where we can operate profitably, make it as convenient as possible for that end of that target market, and then size the store accordingly and do the science and the research behind how big that opportunity for us is. And we're trying to match it with the discussions with yourself in terms of how big a footprint we can put down and afford to put down in that environment.
Yeah, it always astounds me the level of detail that you guys get into. I also suspect because of the high LSM nature of of your product, that every second person wants to know, when are you bringing a Woolies to Pringle, or when are you bringing a Woolies to this area? You probably get that a lot because you're in those circles.
We get a lot of it, yeah.
And you bat that a lot. Your colleague Rian actually shared something with me. Once again, I never know what's sensitive or not sensitive, but what kind of involvement have you guys had with AI in terms of real estate? Is that playing more of a role? How smart are those things getting?
I think we did a lot of work around what the next level of research can be to, I think, one step back. The decision making, the market is fairly saturated, and you use a set of data points and people in the room and experience and people who know the different areas to try and come up with a conclusion as to, is there an opportunity at first, and how big is that opportunity, and what format do you want to play, what kind of blueprint you want to put down in that market to be able to try and maximize that opportunity, and then what kind of return are we going to get out of it. So the AI evolved from historic using property values as an indication of disposable income of that, how big that food market is. So it's derived primarily at the property value, but it doesn't take into account indebtedness or Pringle Bay, for example, the occupation rate of this environment, or the credit card spend, or the spend on luxury items like premium price restaurants. You can get nodes with restaurant spend that's off the chart, but that's an indication of disposable spend. So there's next level of data we're trying to unlock and see that makes it more informed. We can go into a wealthy area where the property prices are
like
high.
To reinforce thinking, basically.
It's reinforced the thinking, but you realize there's not a lot of the disposable income. So it's to try and marry to unpack basically disposable income relative to household property price. There's a distinction sometimes. Sometimes you can go into a town, all the houses are paid off, the property values are not that high, but the disposable income is very high.
Yeah.
And that gives you a different picture, and you can size that opportunity differently then at the end of the day.
I guess the proof is in the pudding. What would be good is to make your traditional real estate calls taking all these factors into account and then asking AI. It would be quite interesting to see after the fact, how close these AIs could get to being accurate, to test. I'm just curious.
Where the opportunity for us lie in AI is to get it down to category level. So you can come into a specific market and saying this market and the makeup of this market, you need to make the butcher double the size. The meat department need to be X size. Don't put a fish counter in.
Komiki, they're more quinoa. More quinoa and lentils.
That's it, Or put no wine in it. This is only a brandy store, just sell brandy. So you can get down to that kind of, we joke about it, but you can really get down to, if you use a lot of your own data and overlay that on top of the research. So not only the size of the store, but what needs to go into it to maximize that footprint. And I think that's sort of the next frontier that everyone is chasing and trying to
come up with a new cool product. cotton candy grapes. Was it that was AI, wasn't it? Yeah.
Something. Yeah. But into which market? It's only in this town.
No,
that town
for
it
sure.
won't work. Yeah.
100% there. Also, just wanted to find out, seeing as you guys are coming up with all these cool products, could you not do seedless mangoes? Is that not possible? Just,
You're asking this from a property guy. Yeah.
I just want to take the discussion to maybe a collaboration angle and partnership angle. I often describe, our job or our industry. I often perceive a shopping center to be a department store, from my perspective, and I always try and view it that way. And the bread and the milk on the furthest corners, you need that every day. So you walk to the furthest corners, which are the supermarkets, and as you come out, it's all the fun and the knickknacks that you don't need, and you end up buying those. So I often play that in my mind, try keep the experience as best as possible for our shopper, which is, in a way, it's like a buying relationship. We're buying, our product is effectively the brands which you guys hold so dear. I certainly think, there's often, and maybe in these relationships it's different because we've been doing it together for so long, and there is true collaboration and there is honesty in all these things, but we both have different agendas in terms of what we're trying to achieve. And I think there probably could be more collaboration between retailers and landlords, and I genuinely mean that. I'll give an example. I think quite recently we had a chat about Fourways Mall where we were speaking about, we think it's time for us to extend the trading hours. We need to push that out later. We think there's a case. People leave Sandton City, they're only getting to Fourways at 6 o'clock. Let's trade later. And it was only after the meeting with you where you mentioned, have you guys considered free parking after 6? Is that a thing? And I was like, geez, why couldn't we do that? Why can't we do that? Why can't we drive shoppers there, make the case? And I think more of that can happen. And I think sometimes we need to take blinkers off. It's easy to say when I go to the shareholders and we're going to write off, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of rands a month income. A great idea was canned. For the record, we are actually seriously considering that angle, and it's purely off a meeting with a seasoned retailer where that kind of thinking comes out. Leon, have you had any thoughts as to how landlords and tenants could collaborate and where you think we could get closer, what we could do better as a community?
I think it firstly start if both the retailer and the landlord have a good understanding of who the customer is that they're trying to serve, who's the customer frequenting the mall. I sometimes find that there's a disconnect sometimes between who is perceived to be the customer in that center, and then that sometimes causes collaborative efforts maybe not to work. So
you mean the landlord having a different perspective of who his shopper is?
Of who the shopper is, or having different perspective of what that shopper's needs might be. I mean, we've had so many instances in the last 5 years where shopping centers don't make it because of that lack of understanding of who the customer is. So maybe not answering your question at all, but yeah, I think. But
I think you make a good point, and you're saying is truly understanding who the shopper is. That's how the retailer.
Maybe sharing of information on the customer, because I mean, at the end of the day, we both serving the same customer. Understanding that customer, what those customers' needs are. They want to maybe have access to cash, but there's no bank in the center, or they need to get their grant payment, but there's no SASSA office. Therefore, they're still going into the CBD and not supporting the center. So, I think it for me it goes back to the understanding of the customer.
Just in terms of your when you spoke earlier, you spoke about in the beginning, super regionals didn't seem to be the home for some of the Pepkor brands, and maybe a controversial question. Do you still get that kind of pushback? Do you have landlords that still have that perception that that a very big center doesn't necessarily capture the demographic of 100Ks? Do you get that pushback? Is that something you still deal with, or is that beyond us now?
No, I don't think so. I think we're beyond that. I mean, there's most certainly some centers where I wouldn't.
You're welcome to name them. No, I'm just joking.
I wouldn't aspire to open a Pep in Hyde Park, but most certainly, once you say that you are a regional, you got some regional pull, you got to cater for the whole market. The market's simply not big enough to. If it's a smaller center, a neighborhood center, I mean, sure, you can cater to a certain market, but these big centers, they can't. I remember back in the day when we started, a big fund said, "Oor my dooie liggaam, there'll never be a Pep in this centre."
Over my dead body for the non-Afrikaans speaking folk.
And but I mean, I think we've gone beyond that. I think Pep has gone a long way in upping their game as well from a look and feel perspective.
Definitely.
So kudos to them for that. I mean, they got to bring it. They got to add some value to this.
And I think turnover and time, man. I remember some of our earlier conversations on Pep Home, and maybe this is the point you make on collaboration, is maybe listening to what customers want. But I remember you and I having a couple of chats about Pep Home, and we ended up transacting, and those stores perform, man. And the customer ultimately decides what retail works, and it's only off the back of the turnover that we can sustain the rentals that we need in order to grow our business. So, time and turnover, I think both of them.
Everybody's looking for a bargain. So,
yeah,
I mean, it's. I think we're beyond that page where the lady in the Merc doesn't want to walk with a Pep Home bag. I think actually kind of. My wife likes to show off if she bought something clever at Pep Home versus maybe at a more expensive store. So yeah,
no, 100% for sure. Maybe a slightly different angle, and I think Woolies absolutely spearheads this. And I want to ask you a little bit about the green sustainability line of thinking. And if I think back, I remember when your Palmyra Junction store opened. It must be 10 years, 15 years ago. I'm not even sure how long ago. That was a long time ago. But that store had some pretty far out digital displays. I think we're saving a penguin every 30 seconds or something on that board. Is that something you guys still pay a lot of attention to? And the reason I ask from your perspective is obviously those are big fridges. That's a big fridge store. If anyone has ever been in a Woolies store without a jacket, you know about it. And I just wanted to know, is that something that comes up in from a real estate perspective that you need to get involved in? Is sustainability a key factor? Taking it forward, I mean, how detailed does real estate play a role in that space?
Yeah, I think the sustainability is a big issue. We can come back to financial sustainability, which is a different topic slightly. But in the environmental sustainability, we are on the cold face of having to make it happen, other than the product side or the farming side. So, and that is mainly, just a quick side on the Palmyra example. Many years ago, we didn't have doors on fridges, and the stores were extremely cold. And we came up with a concept of taking the excessive heat from the refrigeration plant through a water loop. And there was about 7 kilometers of piping underneath the tile work in the store to heat the environment up. So now you've got open fridges spilling cold air, and you taking the plant's heat and you warming the water up to try and warm the environment up. But I mean, to be say, it's not a scalable kind of a concept. And we dabbled with many things. I think the main issue was profitable sustainability, and that drove primary on the electricity side. So it started off with change the refrigeration plant to variable control. Then we changed it to CO2 friendly gases, much more economical, doesn't consume as much energy at the time. A huge debating point for us internally. When you look back at it today, you can't think, why was it such a big issue to put fridge doors on, put a barrier between the customer and the product.
So
that was, on a frozen case, that wasn't an issue, but on the rest of the store, particularly some of our at that time, felt very uncomfortable. And we started to trial, and some stores we trialed, small stores we put all doors on, and then the very big stores, all the fresh units were left open and the rest got doors on. And what that did to the electricity consumption was significant. The payback on those doors, I think, was less than a year. And those doors are pricey. They're about 6,000-7,000 rand per door.
Yeah,
it's another long side story about this. A very nice history about those doors and the manufacturer around them. So I think that was our journey on electricity. Also in sustainability was measure what you consume. So we can control. We can see what each store consume. We can switch the lights off centrally from our offices in Cape Town across the country.
For every store?
Every store, you put the time limits on. So because the discipline is not always in stores to deal with those kind of issues. So you centralize it, measure it, and then also track the billing. So when the billing comes, there's something like 770 different electricity tariffs in the country. We got a dedicated specialist that unpack the tariffs, change the tariffs for that environment and that location to be on the best tariff structure. So it's not only on the consumption, but it's also on what you pay. And the same gone for water. We've done a lot to measure water, but also of lately we had to provide a lot of backup water because the plant and some of our plant and obviously our hot food kitchens and toilets can't operate without water, and we needed to put some redundancy in. So I think on the elements that we can control, a huge focus, and that will remain so going forward. It's a concept of, there was Simon Sussman, one of our previous leaders, was really about, he coined the phrase about, it's about fattening the brand. It's not if you have to do it, and you got to be on top of that game and be market leading, so we've always been pushed to be market leading specifically on some of those elements.
Yeah.
And the big one to come, which we haven't both on the previous point about collaboration, was on the power generation for shopping centres. How can the landlord assist in carrying the food anchors, because they consume so much power, and the solar power has never been enough to really assist the big.
In some cases, electricity and rentals can be quite comparable. That's how big those numbers are.
Big those numbers.
I think there's 2 companies in South Africa that can switch lights off from head office. It's you guys and Eskom. I think. But even if you have all these initiatives, we had a case at one of our shopping centres where, and I don't want to talk about the load shedding too much, but we had so many rolling blackouts, and even though we had full backup, tenants actually just said, "Listen, that's great that you got diesel. I can't afford the diesel." Like it got to that point where, and I think from our perspective, we got to shift our minds from basic rental ops costs. Diesel, you almost need to, and we're starting to have these conversations more and more, which is actually cost of occupancy. What can a tenant afford against the margin? And if you truly apply your mind to that, then you possibly may have a lower vacancy rate as an investor because things are slightly more sustainable. But it's no perfect science, because these systems they cost money, and there's, you got to try and work out a cost-effective way in funding these things. But it starts with cost of occupancy, really.
But it starts with your previous point to Leon about collaboration, because that's the financial sustainability. I think many of the landlords don't understand how the retailer make money, where the model breaks down, and to Leon's point about the customer you're chasing and what the disposable income is, and how do you match the infrastructure and what you charge and what you can charge and not charge, to maximize that opportunity. And I think where the worlds come together, where each party understand each other, those things work so much better, and it's more profitable in the long run for both parties.
The real collaboration is really understanding the business models. And I guess when you've got stakeholders like yourselves that are running on the real estate decisions, and I guess we developer investors, we take the leasing side of the income side of the deal quite key, but I think it is driven by sustainability, and it allows our buildings to be full and continually relet these leases over time. That's the real value, which once again comes to the experience. When you don't have these massive vacancies, I think it all comes down to that.
But also to add, the barriers. We call it for us in our space, the hot topic is parking fees. Why do you penalize a customer for coming to your center?
We just can them at 4 hours more. Done. One meeting.
But we've seen inexperienced asset managers who, when they pressured and have vacancies, they're trying to make it up with the parking tariffs. And that we can quickly see how that changed people's shopping behavior, particularly around food. And I'm not talking about convenience centers or in locations where everyone is used to pay for parking. But when you're the only one paying, charging for parking, and everyone else is free around you, how that change shopping behavior and drive customer behavior into the free parking environments in convenience centers out of the regional malls. So I think there's a symbiosis between truly understanding collaboration as to where does that model break down, when does all the food services and coffee offerings and restaurants take strain because you got a mismatched parking tariff structure. And there's many examples I can quote, live
100%.
examples that I can quote. For us, it's sad actually to see, because you can pick it up in the surrounding stores. All of a sudden, the store down the road is up double digits. This one is -5. Why? It wasn't ever like
just
that.
driving people away.
It's just driving people away. And as much as you raise it, and it drives a vicious circle, because you get to, then there's no product on the shelf, your availability goes down, and that even drives the people to somebody else.
As soon as turnovers are off and stores slide down, whatever magic scale you guys have, I don't quite understand your back system. But as soon as a store goes off the boil, to recover that space, because it's a double whammy, it's the customers that were going there come back and go, oh, well, this isn't quite the same experience, and it just slides the other way. And
so it's difficult to turn around.
Yeah, it's very, very tricky space. Leon, I think the market's quite excited about your new entry to South Africa. We spoke about it a little bit earlier, your new brand that you're rolling out. And I'd love for you just to give us a quick intro as to what Iyana is, if you wouldn't mind, and who that pitches at. Give us a feel.
Yes. So we maybe just it's part of our growth strategy is to really grow our slice of the cake in the women's market. I mean, we're dominant in kids and babies, but it's about 11 times smaller than the women's market. So and we're so underrepresented in the women's market. So we tried our hand at Ackermans Women, which was basically a duplication of the Ackermans ladies range into standalone stores. Turned out to be a terrible idea. So we've basically pivoted and moved that business into a specialty, because that's what it needs, some specialty attention, some differentiation. So it's a very exciting brand. It's would describe as something between Forever New and a poetry. We recently opened, I think in the end of February, we opened 32 stores as a big bang approach.
You're a big business when we gave it a whiz, 32 stores in Feb.
Initial readings the sell-offs were quite good. I think the real test would now be winter and maybe going into summer. But the plan is to keep on rolling out these stores.
So what's the litmus test is how the merchandise moves off the shelves, what the market responds to the garments and the textile.
Yes.
And then from there on, scale and
so you want to see how quickly you can, how quick your sell-offs are, how good and how deep your sell-offs are when you put the product to the customer. Listen, it's easy to get wrong. If you got 4 dresses and you get 1 dress wrong, you got it 25% wrong. So it's more of an art than. It's between an art and a science.
100%.
The product guys would tell you it's more art than science. So, but it seems to be, if we look at social media and the buzz around the brand, it all seems to be very positive. And I think it's something that is needed. I think it's great that it's coming from a local retailer and it's not someone from outside.
For sure. Is it the same team involved with Refinery that's involved in that, or is that
so it's the same creator, with a different team, and they're putting a lot of effort and a lot of detail into it. So can really recommend that the ladies go and check it out. It's
nice. I think every time I chat to seasoned retailers, even the independents, and everyone will always say, you're one bad buy away from absolute hell. So I think the textile buyers and the people that are gearing up for the next season, I don't even know where those folks start, but you can often see in the big tenant turnovers, who's had a tough buy, who's had a tough season. Sometimes it has to do, buyers have got a lot of pressure.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you've seen this new retailer, which are slowly opening stores, called Faro. I don't know if you guys, Maurice, you may have seen it. If you haven't seen it as yet, you should check it out. It's certainly selling branded apparel. I say branded apparel. It's H&M Zara style product, which they do under their own label. And they do it at a discounted price, but they they're not showing the experience as discount. So the stores are high end, stores are very well put together. We've done a couple of deals with these guys and they seem to be performing. Do you see space for maybe, Maurice, for new entrants outside of the traditional listed sector in South Africa? What's your gut feel on new retail, new entrants into the fashion market?
I think the fashion market is crowded. If you just look over the years, our fashion turnover, our relationship of our turnover between foods and clothing has changed. It changed materially over the last years. And then you look at a shopping center as in, call it an asset allocation, and you can say, you got 70-80% of your turnover tied up in fashion and 30% in foods, but food is actually today 60-70% of your turnover. So that the fashion business as a whole, in my opinion, is under pressure, severely under pressure, and so I think it got more chance of shrinking than and rebalancing than materially expanding over time. And even if you look at what's happening in Australia and the spend on fashion, how that's shrunk in a tight economy, and the spend has gone into food and food experiences and all sorts of other things. So fashion, I think, is always going to be a category that's under pressure given the current trends. The challenge, I think, for a new foreign entrant to come into this environment, very tough space, not easy.
100%. I find it quite interesting. I've noticed, when you're abroad and you go to big regional malls overseas, they almost never have supermarkets inside these big regional malls. But in South Africa, they're almost like it's a big key anchor tenant of that space. Why do you think it's different in South Africa? Why do we have supermarkets in regional malls locally, and in Europe it's not a factor? Have you spent much time thinking about that? Something you can share?
I think that's a very difficult one to answer, because you come down, if you take urban city like London, and people are using transport and taxis and not their own cars, and that drove the behavior. If you look at Marks and Spencer, small convenient food stores at the right corner at the entrance to the station, there's no need for you to go to a regional mall. Where here our target customer are in their private car, they on the school run, on the business run, in their local community, and that changes. Now you come into our centers, if we just had fashion restaurants, that it wouldn't work.
Priorities might be slightly different.
It might be slightly different, but for us it's an outing. I'm not saying it's not an outing for them. So if you go to a regional mall today and you want to spend time, and I love some of the centers actually got a Brights or Builders in on the one side, although I don't always think it complements it, but it becomes a destination from renewing your car license to all those kind of things. So the more it's a one-stop shop, cater for the community surrounding it, I think it has a place. As to why it's working here, not in Europe, it's a difficult one to answer. And you also don't see it to that extent in America either. So the centers
I must say, the one thing I've noticed, and maybe Checkers are a group that have driven this agenda, but the supermarket experience in South Africa is world class. The new Pick n Pay stores are phenomenal. Checkers have been dominating that space for some time. The Woolies food stores are outstanding. In fact, we were in London not long ago, and the Marks and Spencers and High Street Kensington was nothing close to the latest Woolies food store. So it just blows my mind that in a third world country in the southern tip of Africa, you can have these outstanding experiences. Maybe just to get to, I guess, the reason we invited you guys here, which is more because you're culturally aligned. I think you're also one of the few people that even know what a seaside and beyond is. But if you wouldn't mind just giving us a sense of the kind of things you get up to in your spare time, and what gets you out of bed outside of all these sexy stores you're opening. You've got a lot on the go, man, and I think that's why I love you.
Yeah, I think there's a lot on the go, and I look at Leon doing all these ultras, and I used to look at Philip from ShopRite at the time doing these ultras, and you always wondered why, and then you realize they're supposed to stay sane, to walk in on a Monday, walking with a smile. And being able to do what we need to do, because I think we are torn always with the ham and the sandwich, between the developers' shareholders and the retailer shareholders, and they want what the one you can't deliver, so you're trying to just overlap the interest just enough to be able to conclude a deal. So you're dealing a lot with misaligned expectations, I would call it.
Sure.
There's a lot of that
sure.
in most companies. And
give us a sense of the kind of things you'd get up to in your spare time. What keeps you busy?
Yes, my passion is water. So if I can get on the water, spend some time off late wing foiling, I'm a very happy person. So,
no, that's a lie. he spends most of his time tinkering, trying to fix his classic ski boat.
Oh, really? Yeah. Has he got a retro boat?
Yeah, for my sins, yeah.
Oh, very nice. Yeah. So tell me now, your wing foil, that's the wing which is not connected to the board. So you hold the wing and then you've got a foil board.
Yeah, so it's a board like a small surfboard, but just fatter. Or imagine like a boogie board, but an oversized boogie board with a mast underneath it, and then like an airplane wing, so it's unpowered. Sure. And then the sail is a bit of a triangle sail that you hold in your hand, no mast, and you just has a leash on it, and then you use it to power yourself up to get onto the foil, and then.
I'm so glad you said unpowered, because there's 2 guys in Komiki that have got powered ones, and if I tell you now that is frowned upon. Yeah, that is not acceptable in Komiki. Yeah. So I'm very glad that's the case. What is the latest surfboard you've purchased, if I may ask?
The latest one was a signature board. It was a midi foil board, a narrower and longer. There's always something better and nicer.
Oh, I love it when you talk dirty. No, Maurice, I must say it's certainly something. It's one of the reasons I'm quite fond of you. We'll often have a rap about the cool stuff you're doing in the ocean, and I think you're very fortunate to have had so much of it, man, and discover it so early. I think I'm only discovered it recently, but I'm going through one of the longest midlife crises known to man, but I'm enjoying it. Leon, over to you. I think similar situation. We'll often spend the first 20 minutes chatting about the new adventures that you're up to. I'm always astounded by the things you're doing. Both Julie and I have been chatting a lot about you lately, about swimming Robben Island without a wetsuit. What's driving this crazy desire to keep burning calories at the rate you're burning? But what's driving this?
I'm quick to feel when stuff isn't in balance in my life. So I like to have that sense of balance. That's for lack of a better word. So, I find that the harder I work, the greater the need is to get outside or to be active. So
that is the smoothest sidestep I've ever heard. The reason I spend so much time outside is because I work so hard. Yeah, that was very smooth.
So I might wake up in the morning at 3:30 and just get the urge to go ride my bike, and I'll be on the bike from 4 to 7, and then go to work. But I mean, it's like I say, it's a passion of mine to be outside, to hang out with mates while being active, and it's to support my wine drinking habit.
See, when was it? Like 6 months ago, I was I think I fell out of bed at 7 o'clock. I think I walked my dog half a walk, got to the Com coffee shop, and I saw Leon rolling in his bike. I was like, "Oh, you're having a little ride around Cape Point. Where have you come from?" And he's like, "No, I've come from Melkbos." And he's in Komiki riding his bike. Obviously, I felt a little bit insignificant. Okay, guys, from my perspective at Flanagan Gerard, once again, I really appreciate your time. I know you're both extremely busy folks. And for you guys taking time to just come and have a bit of a chat with us and share some of your market insights, we're honored. And we thank you, man. And we look forward to doing a lot more business with you, collaborating, listening, and doing appropriate deals together. So thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.